Okay, can you see that?
We can.
Great. So thank you very much, Peggy, for inviting me to speak tonight. As Peggy said, I'm a volunteer with a group called Beyond Plastics. Maybe you've heard of them. It's a nonprofit group whose mission is to end plastic pollution. And the reason why we're talking about this tonight, there's a famous quote attributed to Chief Seattle, which says, "What we do to the earth, we do to ourselves." So tonight I'm going to be talking about two things only: single-use plastic and plastic packaging. So I'm sure you know plastic is used by virtually every industry around the globe. But we're not going to be talking about automotive, pharmaceuticals, textiles, building, just packaging and single-use plastics. So, one metric of how big this problem is: 5 trillion plastic bags are produced annually. And that's just one measurement. So, tonight's agenda, very quickly, how plastics are made. Once they're made and used and tossed, where does that plastic trash end up? What's the impact on people and animals? Is there a connection to climate change? What about recycling or other solutions? And finally, and maybe most importantly, what you can do to address this problem. So, very briefly, plastics are made from fossil fuels and chemicals. So, in this country, we make them from natural gas because we have such a glut of it. In Europe, they use oil, and other parts of the world, they use coal. So, plastic requires turning substance into plastic requires, in this case, natural gas and then also chemicals. Scientists have identified over 16,000 chemicals that are used in plastic production. And by molecular weight, plastics are about 50% polymers and 50% chemicals. So you remember fracking. We don't talk about it very much anymore, but it's still happening. So one of the byproducts of fracking is ethane. So both the ethane and the natural gas are piped off site, and the ethane is sent to an ethane cracker. So that's what this facility is. And an ethane cracker takes the ethane and subjects it to very high heat to the point where the molecules crack and a new substance is formed, which is ethylene. And ethylene is one of the polymers that forms the basis of many plastics. So then this ethylene is formed into what are called nurdles. And nurdles then are the feedstock for all other plastics. So they're beads. These nurdles can be beads, they can be flakes, they can take other forms, but they are the primary feedstock for making other types of plastic. And you'll notice these nurdles are in the grass. And that's one of the biggest problems with this stuff, because once it's in the environment, it's very difficult to collect or retrieve. So, yes, plastic production is an environmental justice issue. So, in our country, there are two main areas where plastic or ethane is cracked and plastic is produced. One is the Ohio River Valley or Appalachia, and then the second is the Gulf Coast um, around uh, Louisiana, Port Arthur. And these facilities have been sited typically in very low income areas or in communities of color. And it's these two groups or these two geographic areas that share the brunt of the plastic pollution from the actual ethane crackers. That said, there are ethane crackers and plastic processors throughout the country. And in fact, there's one right here in Rockland in Orangeburg called Aloof. And they take the nurdles that you just saw and they melt it and turn it into plastic bags. So you don't have to go 1,000 miles. There's one in our own backyard. So, for decades, the plan of the fossil fuel industry was to extract all of the oil, natural gas, and coal until it ran out. However, with increasing knowledge of climate change and growing interest in renewables, the industry obviously sees the writing on the wall and is diversifying. So their plan B is to go forward on two fronts. One is plastic production, and the other is fertilizer production. So very quickly, in terms of climate change, the plastics themselves emit tons of greenhouse gas emissions, as does the industry. And if you were to think of the plastic industry as a country, it would be the fifth largest emitter of greenhouse gases in the world. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. So suffice it to say that plastic packaging production pollutes at every stage of its cycle, from extraction, production, transportation, usage, and disposal. So after we use this packaging or single-use plastics and it becomes trash, where does that wind up? Well, less than 10%, really 6 to 8% actually is recycled, and that's kind of a generous number. About 10% is incinerated. I'm sorry, 20% is incinerated. About 50% is landfilled, and then the remaining 20% is mismanaged. And what that means is it gets thrown out a car window, it gets dropped by a rail car delivering nurdles. It finds its way into the environment. And there, it's very hard to retrieve. So in New York State, we do not export our plastic waste, but other states in the US do. And it used to be that the US was a major exporter of plastic trash to China. But in 2017, China issued its national soil policy, in which they said we are no longer accepting the world's plastic waste. And they did so because so much of it was contaminated, they could not repurpose it. So since then, other countries have requested, I guess, this plastic waste so they can reuse it, repurpose it. So that's primarily Mexico, Malaysia, India, Vietnam, Indonesia, Turkey, and El Salvador. And actually, Canada does take some plastic waste. They sort of cull the most valuable parts, and then they export the rest. So you'll notice that all of the countries, well, actually, I don't know about Mexico, but the others are to some extent considered still developing countries. And what unites them is that they don't have the waste management infrastructure to deal with this plastic waste. Actually, the US doesn't have the infrastructure to deal with this amount of waste. So it gets sent to these countries. People sort through it, they pick out that which has any monetary value, and then much of it is left as waste. So maybe some of it goes into a managed landfill, some of it goes into an informal dump, maybe some of it goes next to a river, and the wind carries it, and it often winds up in the water, in a riverway, and on its way to the ocean. So scientists estimate there's about 8 to 15 million tons of plastic that enter our oceans all around the world every year. And you can visualize that by thinking of a dump truck backing up to the shoreline and emptying its contents every minute. That is the volume that we're talking about. But having plastic get into the ocean by carried by waterways isn't the only way it gets there. Another major source of plastic in the ocean is actually um, the cargo ships that transport the nurdles around the world. So this is a container ship, and it is estimated that as much as 250,000 tons of nurdles make their way into the ocean from these ships annually. And that's because these ships have accidents. They run aground, they catch on fire, and they often lose their containers. They fall into the water and they are not retrievable. So I think it was 2020. There was a ship called the Express Pearl that was off the coast of Sri Lanka when it caught on fire. And the contents of the ship, all of the containers, fell into the water. Some broke open, including barrels of oil, chemicals, and nurdles. So here is the Sri Lankan army trying to clean up their beaches. So I'm sure you're well aware of the impact of plastics on marine life. We've all seen these heartbreaking pictures of various animals ingesting this. So here at the top left is an albatross feeding her chick what are plastic pellets, because to her they look like food. So animals wind up dying because they are starved, because they're not ingesting food. Here's a fish, again, eating nurdles. Those are not fish eggs. They also die because they get entangled in plastic and they suffocate. So, virtually every marine seabird has been shown to be affected by this. Plastic has also been found in the bodies of whales, porpoises, sea turtles, and fish. And in fact, I think it's the Ellen MacArthur Foundation says they did a study where they predict by 2050 there will be as much plastic in the sea by weight as there are fish. So the thing about plastics is that they do not decompose. They are stable, but they are not inert. And that means, and I'm not a scientist, they are chemically active. So all those thousands of chemicals that are used to get whatever characteristics is desirable in a plastic product, they can leach out of that plastic in the ocean. And that happens because of the churning of the ocean. It breaks down these plastic pieces into smaller and smaller particles from to microplastics and then to nanoplastics, and also the action of the UV rays from the sun also start to break down um, and leading to the leaching of these chemicals. These chemicals then interfere with phytoplankton and zooplankton and interfere with their ability to capture carbon and have the ocean serve as that carbon sink. The most common plastic that has been found in the ocean is polyethylene, and that type of plastic it emits ethane and methane gases into the ocean. So, what's the impact on human health? And really, what the question is, how does plastic get in our bodies in the first place? Well, there are numerous pathways. So, first of all, we drink plastic, we eat it, we inhale it, and we absorb it through our skin. Studies have shown that bottled water, that is, water in plastic bottles, has a very high nanoplastic content. So, if you were to stop one habit of plastic using, I would urge you to stop drinking water out of plastic bottles. Plastic is also found in beer. It's found in tap water. It's found in seafood. It's found in other foods as well, because plastic is found in the soil. Plastic is used to encapsulate seeds for crops, and it often contaminates food in the food production process. Um, we breathe plastic pollution as from the ethane cracker plants that I told you about, or various plastic processing facilities. We also breathe it, say, for example, from the wheel later. I'm sure you are aware that there's an incinerator in Westchester, and we get, when the winds are right, we get pollution from that, on our side of the river. So, in addition, textiles shed plastic fibers, as do tires. So it's in the atmosphere. Um, Scientists have discovered um, nanoplastics and microplastics in virtually every organ in the human body. So I think it was 2020, a team of Italian scientists discovered it in the human fetus. It's also been discovered in the placenta, in breast milk, in virtually every organ, in deep tissue, the bloodstream, and it has crossed the blood-brain barrier. Actually, scientists in 2024 in the New England Journal of Medicine reported nanoplastics in plaque in the carotid artery. So the fact is, it's really inescapable. Um, Another way, so there are two ways that plastic can harm us, and one is by the physical presence of these micro or nanoplastics in the body. Um, the other is through these chemicals that are leached into the body or from these plastic particles. And we know that a lot of these chemicals are endocrine disrupting chemicals. So those I think are particular are the phthalates and bisphenols. And scientists and researchers have done decades of research on the impacts of these chemicals on the human body. So they know how harmful it is to the human body. So these endocrine disrupting chemicals interfere with our hormones and they sort of hijack those processes. And in doing so, they can cause breast cancer, uterine cancer. They've been known to increase the chance of autism, ADHD. They've been said to increase obesity, and a number of reproductive problems. And in fact, there's something called the phthalate syndrome, and that is a collection of symptoms that describe certain males or young men. And these symptoms now include a lower sperm count, lower fertility rate, lower testosterone levels, and undescended testicles. So this is a group of symptoms associated with high phthalate levels in certain males. Um, so you may be thinking, oh, wait a minute, we do have agency, we do have solutions here. What about recycling? Well, I wish I could say that recycling was helpful because we've certainly grown up to think it really is the answer, right? So everybody's familiar with what are called the chasing arrows. And this symbol, the chasing arrows with a number in it, is found on the bottom of virtually every plastic item. And they're supposed to, or we've been led to believe that when we see that symbol and that number, we know that we can recycle that piece of plastic, right? Well, in reality, The only plastics that have a prayer of being repurposed are numbers 1, 2, and 5. 3 is polyvinyl chloride, 4 is low density polyethylene, 6 is polystyrene, known as styrofoam, and I have no idea what 7 is. That's really scary stuff. But those have never been really thought to be recyclable. Um, But in fact, recycling really doesn't work for a whole host of reasons. But let me just walk you through the process and you'll see for yourself. So just think about it. Every week, you dutifully put your plastic containers in your blue bin at the curb, and a worker comes along and collects your blue bin, empties it into that truck, and drives it to Hilburn. There, it is sorted, it's scanned electronically, typically, it's baled, and then it's transported again to a plastic processor. Once it reaches that facility, it is sorted yet again, it's cleaned, it's shredded, it's melted, and then turned into a product. This is a very expensive process. All these different steps, all this transportation cannot compete in any meaningful way with the cost of that ethane that was collected during fracking, because that's actually a byproduct of fracking. So there's no competition in cost. And when manufacturers are faced with, well, do I use the cheap, material or the much more expensive? You know what they do. Um, it also doesn't work because it's difficult to collect. It's expensive to collect recyclables. Recycled material can only be repurposed typically one time, and when it is downcycled. So that means a plastic water bottle doesn't become another water bottle. It becomes carpeting, or maybe it becomes that plastic lumber. But it sort of goes to a lower level of product. So the reality is, we cannot recycle our way out of this problem. It is just too big. Um, the quantities of waste are too large. They are often just too difficult to collect. Recycled products themselves, because there are so many different chemicals involved, um, can carry toxicity problems. They can also be risks to the workers who produce this stuff. So we really need to get beyond the idea of recycling. Now, the industry, and that's another whole issue, has told us for years that recycling is the way out, that it's our fault. We just don't try hard enough. We don't recycle enough. We're not responsible. We litter. But in fact, that's never been the solution, and it still isn't. Another thing that the industry proposes is now it's called advanced recycling. It's previously been known as chemical recycling, and there were other names before that, but essentially it is taking plastic waste, subjecting it to very high heat, and in effect melting it. So this is both a very expensive process and a very polluting one. And the reason why you don't hear about it is because they've never been able to make it cost efficient or bring it to scale. So, how do we solve this? So, here is a typical section of a refrigerated aisle in virtually any grocery store you walk into. And almost every product you see is covered in plastic, right? But think about 40 years ago. This was a typical collection of grocery items. It's not refrigerated, but you immediately see that the containers are made of paper, cardboard, aluminum in some cases, glass. Um, tin cans or steel, perhaps, and a little bit of plastic. So the good news is we know how to solve this problem, right? We did it a couple of decades ago, and we had plenty of food. That was not an issue. But we have to get away from a linear economy, which is take, make, use, dispose of, pollute, and really embrace the idea of a circular economy, which keeps materials in process, in circulation. So you make something, you use it, you reuse it, you repair it, you redesign it, and you keep those materials in play. And another piece of that circular economy involves the concept of extended producer responsibility. And we're lucky because here in New York State, we have laws that embrace this concept already. So the concept simply says that if you're a producer or manufacturer, you are responsible for your product from beginning to end, right? And so we have applied that concept to certain items. So, for example, you can now take your expired pharmaceuticals back to CVS or Walgreens, and they must accept them and then dispose of them properly. The same is true for batteries. You take your electronic waste up to Pomona, and carpeting, I believe, is subject to that. I believe it starts this year or maybe next. So this is a concept we're already familiar with, and we're, cooperating with it or embracing it. We also solve this obviously through legislation, through government initiatives. We're lucky that we still have the bottle bill in New York State. Um, and that we've had a plastic bag ban now for 4 years, something like that. There's also legislation that is attempting to address plastic packaging and waste. And 7 states have already enacted this legislation. Most of them are not very far in implementation because, as you can imagine, it is extremely complicated and it requires a number of different agencies or outside entities to help manage it and monitor it. Um, and New York is one of those states that is attempting to get this legislation passed. But in addition to the government, I mean, just think, government is often sort of behind the private sector. Not always, but sometimes. So let me tell you quickly about Amazon. So the Oceana nonprofit learned that in 2020, Amazon used 600 million pounds of plastic packaging to send their um, items to customers all over the country. Okay, 600 million pounds. So Oceana pleaded with Amazon to adopt or to use paper instead. Amazon refused. So Oceana conducted surveys of their prime customers. They did secret shopper surveys. What else? They did petitions to no avail. But finally, they went to the shareholders and they got the shareholders to demand that management take this seriously and stop using so much plastic. So Amazon pledged to use paper for 95% of their packaging in 2025. Now, I don't know the result. I don't typically use Amazon, but I have yet to look up to see if they've made any announcements about how successful that has been. They are the largest retailer in the world, so if they do this, it should have some kind of an impact. So, what I had said before, the great thing about this problem is that we already know how to solve it. We don't really need to wait for, some new material to be discovered. But even so, people are looking for that new material, and that's great. So there is lots of innovation going on. You might have heard there's a company upstate called Ecovative, and they are experimenting with mushroom fiber for packaging, like to hold, those little cartons of tomatoes you can buy from the farmer's market, that kind of material. People are also trying to do the same with bamboo, cellulose, and hemp. So this innovation is happening, and I'm sure we'll, be seeing new products very shortly. I mean, we've already seen some of them. So the last question, and perhaps most important, is what can you do? Well, first of all, a lot of people get very um, focused on, getting rid of everything plastic in their house. And while I think that's a worthwhile goal, you can't escape it. It's ubiquitous. It's in your furniture. It's maybe your sheets. It's your toothbrush. It's virtually, or many things in your refrigerator. It's throughout the house. So, try to cut down where you can, uh, but it's really hard to get rid of it all. Two things though, don't drink water from a plastic water bottle and don't microwave your food in anything plastic, period. If you want to learn more, there are two excellent documentaries. One's called The Story of Plastic, which I really highly recommend. And the second is Plastic Detox, which is a really sobering documentary. It just came out a month ago, and it's about infertility among five young couples, and the work by this researcher named Dr. Shanna Swan. It's excellent. Judith Enck, who founded Beyond Plastics, has released a book in December called The Problem with Plastic. I highly recommend. Another way is to give feedback to retailers. Tell them you don't want to see, a specific product in plastic when there is a paper alternative. So, for example, I have two cats. I'm buying litter all the time. There are a couple of products that the litter is packaged in cardboard. If you don't have it in your grocery store, ask for it. It is available. And you can do that with other products as well. Get involved with a nonprofit. Well, you're already involved in Sierra Club. um, Beyond Plastic, Oceana, Greenpeace. There are groups working on this issue around the globe, um, because that's how big a problem it is. You can also lobby against plastic packaging, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. And finally, you can join our Rockland chapter right here of Beyond Plastic. So finally, there is legislation that we are working on. It's before the state legislature as we speak. It's called the Packaging Reduction and Recycling Infrastructure Act. It's known as PREA. And it requires, if you manufacture or sell certain products in New York State, you will be required to reduce packaging of all types by 30% over a 12-year period. So you have 12 years to figure this out. And the balance of that packaging has to be either reused or recycled material. It prohibits 12 toxic chemicals. It disallows the chemical recycling that I mentioned to count towards your 30% target. It can still occur in the state, it just can't count towards that target. And if you can't meet your target, then you as a manufacturer will be paying an eco fee that will fund municipal infrastructure and recycling programs. Now, as I say, this is the fourth year, I think, we're before the legislature. Last year in June, there were over 100 corporations that were lobbying against this legislation in Albany. That included Kraft, Dell, Delta, Amazon, McDonald's, PepsiCo, L'Oreal, and many more. So you figure we're doing something right here if it brings these people out. So if you can, there is a QR code right there. If you take that QR code, take a picture of it right now, it will take you to an online petition to ask Speaker Hasty to bring this to the Assembly floor. He has not brought it to the floor yet at all. It has passed the Senate 3 times, but it has yet to come to the Assembly floor. We think we have the sponsors, we think we have the votes. We have to get Speaker Hasty now to let members vote on it. Oh, and I'm sorry, the bigger, better bottle bill. We do have returnables here. We've had them since 1984. It's a nickel deposit. We want to increase it to a dime and expand the number of containers that are subject to this to virtually everything, except I think milk and pure fruit juices are exempted, but every other kind of beverage would be subject to this law. It also increases the handling fee for redemption centers, which are going out of business right and left, and it includes a requirement for a certain percentage of recyclables. Again, we're trying to get this to the Assembly floor. Please call Assemblyman Hasty. And these are your takeaways if you remember nothing else. Plastic pollution and single-use plastics pollute every step of the way. Recycling is not the answer. This stuff poses serious health issues for people and animals. And actually, we don't have enough data to understand the impact yet because it's such a new problem. It does contribute to climate change, and we have a way to start to address this with this legislation. And that's my story. Any questions?
Yeah. So you should be able to put your question either in the chat or raise your hand and unmute yourself. Yes, it was an excellent presentation. I learned a lot. I've been thinking about this and reading about it for years, but it was very informative. Yeah. So you
Okay.
should be able to, you can click the react button to raise your hand, or you can just go like this, raise your hand. Maybe Suzanne, stop sharing the screen so we can see.
Yep.
Okay. Or you can put your questions in the chat.
Okay.
Okay. I guess I have a question or two. What about biodegradable, compostable, or regenerative plastics? Are any of those any better? And silicone. What about silicone? Well,
So silicone, I think the jury is still out because, and it depends on what you read, but it is considered a plastic. Supposedly, it doesn't leach out chemicals like other plastics do, but I think we just don't know yet if it is a better alternative. And compostable, it really depends on what the material is because many compostable items are only compostable in an industrial facility, and we don't have those in Rockland. So you can't put it in your home compost bin. I think they do have some facilities in the city, but we don't have them here in Rockland. So that doesn't get us very far.
There's something that I was reading about the other day called regenerative plastic.
I'm not familiar with that.
Okay. I mean, my own impression is also just all of this.
Excuse me, somebody's making a lot
Yeah.
of noise
Okay, I think I got it.
on their desk or something, and if they
I
could
think
mute themselves.
Yes, I think I just, so, all this, anything that's single use is going to be adding to climate change, pollution, etc. So we should be. So there's a question in the chat, are there microorganisms or fungi that can eat plastic?
Supposedly, Japanese scientists have found such organisms. I don't know a lot about it yet, but it's certainly, I'm sure, an area that other scientists will be exploring. And I don't think they haven't brought anything yet to market. but I'm sure there'll be more research in that area, certainly.
Okay, question. We have food scrap recycling in Orangetown, but the bags have a shiny inside. Does that mean that they are plastic lined? That's a
I
good
would hope
question.
not. I don't know what the bag looks like.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Marcy,
Marcy
you
knows.
have the answer to that?
It's cellulose.
Oh,
It
all
is.
right. Wonderful. Good to know. Thank you.
Um,
Okay, another question. While we don't know a lot about the health issues related to plastic intake, is there some preliminary information known about the health effects of plastic in the body? I know you did talk about endocrine disruption.
Yes.
What about cancer?
So, I mean, endocrine disruptors, there's been decades of research. And so a lot of those impacts are known, but that's just one small group of chemicals, and there are thousands more. So, and some scientists have said we're essentially conducting an experiment on the human race without any controls, without permission, with no end in sight. And part of the problem is we just don't have enough, we haven't had enough time to do longitudinal studies, right? This is a relatively new problem. Most, supposedly half of the plastic ever produced was produced in the last 15 years. So this problem has just mushroomed.
So what about PFAS? Is PFAS included in the chemicals that are used in plastic?
Yes.
And I'm wondering, in Rockland County, we have PFAS in all of our water supply. It's very diffuse, and I'm wondering whether Aloof could possibly be a source, and maybe some other companies like that could possibly be a source I know there's no way for you to answer that question, but since they are manufacturing plastic, essentially, it's conceivable that PFAS is involved.
Sure. Yes.
Yeah.
So just so you know, the legislation that we're trying to get passed had 17 chemicals banned. But the negotiations that just happened a couple of weeks ago reduced that by 5. So the industry pushed for all of those chemicals to be removed. We were left with 12. They should all have been banned, but
So I
there
know
you
you
go.
have to leave in a minute, but I'm
Yes.
just trying to go through some of the other questions. I've been using a hard plastic water bottle because it's lighter than steel, but I'm concerned it does it leach. If it says not BPA, etc., do those hard plastic, does Nalgene, whatever, do some of them, are there any that don't leach microplastics into the water?
I can't say that for certain, but what I've read is that any plastic will leach some chemicals.
Hmm.
So I would just stay away from any kind of plastic for beverages or for as a food container, to the extent you can, just, use something else.
I mean, what I've found is like if I taste, it has a little plasticky taste, then that probably means that the plastic is leaching into it. I see Harry is saying, I was disheartened by the high plastic content in beer. Is the same true for soft drink or other beverages, or is it presumed to stem from the brewing practices? Interesting question. Somebody else said the cans are lined with BPA. Do you know about that?
Yes, yes. So there are so aluminum cans. I just learned about this. Soft drink cans, aluminum cans are lined with a plastic coating, and I believe it's BPA. I'm not sure. So it's not pure aluminum.
Hmm. Do tea bags contain plastic or do all tea bags contain plastic in the seams?
I don't know if all do, but I know some do, definitely.
Should I even bother to separate my recyclables from my garbage?
Oh, that's a good question.
I live in Westchester, and my garbage company puts all the recyclables in with the garbage in the same bin in their truck.
Well, if you have single stream recycling, then yes, they combine paper, glass, plastic, metal into the same um, truck. We don't in Rockland. We separate out our paper from all the rest. Basically, you can put in numbers 1, 2, and 5. Whether they'll be recycled or not in purpose depends on whether there's a market for that plastic at the time they are collected. So Peggy, I'm sorry, I do need to go.
I thank you so much. This
Sorry.
was really excellent. Okay, we will definitely send out the video. This was very informative. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay.
Okay.
Off you goes, okay.
Peggy, can I make up a comment? I didn't know
Sure.
how to raise my hand. It's Chris.
Sure.
Hi. Yeah, I just wanted to say that very recently I just looked up the old law that was passed in, I say old, like, was it 10 years ago, 2016, 2018, that mandates in New York State big box stores to collect what they call film plastics. And I found some pretty good information. I don't know how valid it is, but on what the law requires and what kinds of plastic can be accepted. It's not just plastic bags that you can take back, to the big box stores. And it also requires these stores to keep records of how much in weight that they collect and where they send them to. And there's only 3 facilities in the state of New York, and they're listed on that website where you can look and see where, at least theoretically, these things are sent and what is done with it. So some of them are made into hard plastic products. So I was actually somewhat encouraged about that. And I think New Jersey has a similar law, and it lists on that website, it lists, if you just Google plastic recycling, I forget how I found it, but it was very easy to find. The previous law that had passed that mandated this, it gives a list of everything they can accept and what they can't accept. And so I found it helpful. I shared it with my community. I live in a retirement community. And the main question I have is, are they complying with the law? What are they actually doing with these? Because I think we heard in a previous meeting that some of it's just sent to an incinerator, but that's not supposed to happen. Do you know anything more about that, Peggy, or anybody else?
I know we had a presentation years ago this was quite a few years ago from Rockland Green, and
Yeah,
they said that they are particularly good at finding sources, and that I don't know that they're recycling they have these magnets and information, I'm sure it's online
right,
also, about what they're recycling.
right. But what Rockland Green is talking about is what we put in our trash for recycling, as opposed to what we take to the recycling. It's a whole different kind of plastic, these film plastics that you can take to the grocery store, the
I
big
would
box stores.
I hate to say it, but I think the answer to film plastic is just to avoid it wherever possible. Avoid
Right.
plastic bags, bring a reusable.
Yeah,
Don't, if you're going to take something to the dry cleaner,
yeah,
ask them not to cover it with film.
right.
It's just
But
that's
there,
the real
but
answer.
these 3 facilities, if you look up the facilities, they show the products that they make out of this stuff. And it includes these things like those hard plastic crates
hmm hmm
that, a lot of people use. So to me, it's not completely worthless if they're
Okay.
making it from
hmm
recycled plastic.
I hear you.
Um,
Yeah.
so,
I think, the answer that there are a lot of us are finding ways to avoid plastic.
but yeah, the
But
packaging,
as we all said to each other, it's very difficult to
it
avoid it
is.
altogether. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'm trying to respect everybody's time. I
sure.
know I want to also talk about the climate law. Bob Morrow, I know you had something that you wanted to talk about. We would need it to be brief, but if you wanted to unmute yourself, welcome. Bob has a project that he's working on. Yeah.
Sorry,
unfortunately was called to a board meeting at this hour, but I'm home now. Thank you for inviting me. Excuse me. I'm a retired family physician, and I'm working with the BZAC Environmental Education Center in Yonkers. One of the issues of the many that we're coping with is the concept of what goes into the air from sewage plants. We sort of take care of almost all the sewage from Western and Southern Westchester, and it gets dumped in the Hudson after being processed in my neighborhood. We've noticed big bulges and many illnesses and so on from that. As it's relevant to this discussion, I should mention of the communities of less well-off people, we in our early death rate is 97% compared to the other similarly impoverished communities in the state of New York. We don't have a clear answer why that is so, but we do know, as we've discussed, measuring the small plastics, microparticles coming off the sewage treatment plant. And it turns out that Washington has turned off that as a request. You don't have any order anywhere in the state or the United States to measure microplastics, which tend to be very small, 2.5 mm's. I think they're micrometers. And these are not well destroyed in the process of heating or in flaring. The flares are usually about 2,500 degrees, and the microparticles are destroyed at 6,000 degrees. So we have a long way to go there. Another problem with all of these is that they go through your lungs, into your body, into your bloodstream, into your organs, where they have found to cause increased levels of cancer, pancreatic cancer, and other cancers, as well as aneurysms in your major blood vessels, as well as brain tumors. This is all fairly new information, so we're going to try to figure out what we expect to find is that there are a lot of microplastics being put into the air in our area by this large plant that processes 105 million gallons of sewage a day. Go ahead. Someone was asking something? No.
No.
Okay. And so what we're going to do is try to measure these ourselves. Most of the instrumentation to do this is fairly expensive, and we're trying to track down people who have processes that are available to us. But in the meantime, the literature in the world seems to show that some of the simpler techniques of measurement are of equal value, and those really just involve a funnel that funnels the heavier products in the air into a bottle. And then you put it under a microscope and count the plastic particles, which are flat and colorful or black, and have sharp edges. Look very different from the rest of the particles we find in sewage. So this process will be going on over the next several months. We're just getting set up for it by manufacturing these devices to measure. Now, I was hoping if anybody does have a place that does these measurements, I know there are some around the state, but they're very difficult to locate and engage in. But that's what we're doing. And it's worrisome because these particles are, of course, oil. They come from the ground. They're oil well products. All the plastics are made from oil. And of course, oil is extraordinarily profitable. So efforts to measure these things are many difficulties placed in our way.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, you'll have to report back to us on your findings once you're done, for sure.
Thank you. Hopefully by the fall.
Okay. So I want to move